The sikha we're going to learn is the sikhas chelik chof aleph, the first sikha to Parsha Beshalach. Eifem posik vayasa meishes Yisrael miyamsu, the posik which says that when the Eibusha split the Yamsuf and everything was finished. So the posik says vayasa Meishe made the Yidden travel away from the Yamsuf. Steht in Medrash, it says in Medrash, and Rasha brings this Rabbi Pirusha of Torah, and Rasha brings it in his commentary on Torah. He Sion Bal Korchom. That means Moshe had gezwungen the Yidden wegzugehen from Yamsuf. Moshe forced the Yidden to go away. That's why Yasa means he made them leave. He made them travel away. He forced them. The Chazal on Nevayah, the Chazal explained why did they have to force them? As Yidden seinen gewähnt von Nidbiris Hayam. Yidden were busy with taking the loot that they found because the Egyptians that followed them and then they were in the Yamsuf, they put up on themselves gold and silver and on the wagons and on the animals. So all that was there now, and the Yidden were collecting it. So the Yidden were busy with what we call Bisas Hayam, the loot of the Yam. But Kedelo is the Bisas Mitzrayim, and the Chazal tell us that there was even more that they got there than they got in Mitzrayim. Before they left Mitzrayim, David told them that they should borrow, so to speak, take from the Egyptians gold and silver and clothes and everything else, and they took a lot. They took very lot, and the Rebbe brings the Sikha that it says that the one that took the least from Mitzrayim was 90 donkeys loaded with gold and silver in Mitzrayim. And nevertheless, what they took by the Yamsuf was even more than that. The finally gave out a veggie for Yamsuf, so they didn't want to leave. They're in the middle of collecting the gold and the silver and all these things. They didn't want to leave. So Moshe had to force them to leave. The Rebbe says it's hard to understand. At the time of Kriyas Yamsuf, the Eibusha revealed himself to the Eden, as the Loshen is in Rasha, the Kveidei Nigle Aleim, Hashem with his whole glory revealed himself to the Eden. The Eden am gesagt Zeh Keli, just because we see in the Shira, in the Oz Yosher, the Eden said Zeh Keli, Zeh, this is my God. When you say the word Zeh, means Marin Neisebez, we're able to show it with the finger. So they were able to point that this is Hashem, which means Hashem was very much revealed to them. These Azros Hashivcha Layama Shaliro Levim. Rashi says, and Medrash says, that even a low-level Yid, a regular maid, saw of godliness more than the Nevi'im saw, the prophets later saw. Und das hat gepeilt auf Yidden, als sie haben gesagt, Shiro LaKadosh Baruch Hu, Divrei Shavach Veidah. And that made them say, praise to Hashem. They said the Shira, praising Hashem. So they were basically in a very, very, very high spiritual level. So after all that, they were so much involved in collecting the gold and silver from the Yam. What kind of importance did the gold and silver have to them compared to the great revelation of the Shekhinah that was there by Kriyas Yamsuf? So they cared about Gashmis that they couldn't move away. Moshe had to force them to go away because they cared so much about collecting more gold and silver. The Mia is noch starker. The question, the wonder is even stronger. The Yidden knew, because they were told by Moshe Rabbeinu before yet, that when they go out of Mitzrayim, they are going to serve Hashem on this mountain, which means they were going to receive the Torah. So they knew as for Yamsuf gains they to Matan Torah. From Yamsuf, they will be going to Matan Torah. Und noch mehr, sie haben gezählt die Tag bis Matan Torah. They counted the days till Matan Torah. Counting the days, you count only something that you're longing to. You can't wait to get to it. So it says like a Medrash, the Rishonim bring down the Medrash, that the mitzvah of Sfira Seimer is a result of what happened then. When the Eden went out of Mitzrayim and they knew they're going to go to Matan Torah, they couldn't wait. So they counted the days. Hashem said, since you counted the days then, every year between Pesach and Shavuos, you will count the days. So counting the days means that they had a shteke, because they had a longing, waiting for this day. And how could it be that after all that, what Bisas Hayab Tefes Mokim given Bazei, so the loot, the Gashmis that they were collecting by the Yamsuf was so important to them, more begain in Highlands of Matan Torah, more than going to Matan Torah. The fact that they didn't want to go means that delaying going to Matan Torah. They knew from here they're going to Matan Torah. If they're not going to go so fast, they'll delay it, so they'll be delaying Matan Torah. Something they couldn't wait to get to, so they will delay it because of some gold and silver. Which is the opposite of counting the day. On that same day, They counted every day from when they went on the Mitzrayim. Before they went on the Mitzrayim, they didn't count the days. They knew it's going to happen because they had to wait for the day they leave. And when they left, they started counting. So that day, that Kriyas Yamsuf, they counted that day, which means that day was a day they expressed their longing. They couldn't wait for Matan Torah. And at the same time, they delayed it. They were thinking of delaying it because of collecting more gold and silver. So we have to say, Ados was the Yidden am nicht gewollt ablassen die Bises Yam, that this the Yidden did not want to let go of the Bises Yam, of the loot of the Yam. Is nicht given their fire was Kesef Azov mitzad atzmi, aber sie gehat as achshivas. It's not because gold and silver on its own right was so important to them. Weil sie haben gerechnet, Ados sie haben Bises Yam is the Rotzen Hashem. The reason was because they assumed in their mind this is what Hashem wants them to do. So it's not the gold and silver that they cared about. They felt Hashem wants them to collect the gold and silver. And before the Rebbe explains why, the Rebbe continues. Well, das ist the keshet zwischen dem Pirush and Bal Korchom. This will explain also, saying that they didn't want to leave the Bises Hayam, is because they felt this was the will of Hashem, shows us a connection between this pshat of Bal Korchom that they left by force, that they didn't want to leave because they were busy with the Bises Hayam, fits mitten Pirush with another pshat that the Meforshim say, Aziden am nit gewollt avegen von der Isgalus Hashchinah to Kriyas Yamsuf. Why didn't they want to leave? Because there was such a great revelation of the Shechina by Kriyas Yamsuf, they didn't want to leave it. Now they seem to be two opposite pshatim. Here they say they didn't want to leave because they wanted the Gashmiyas. Another pshat seems to be an opposite pshat. They didn't want to leave because they had a lot of Ruchnis there. So the Rebbe says no, they go together. While the Isgalus Hashchinah from Kriyas Yamsuf had they Bezares given some kind saying Rotzen Hashem to vernehmen sich mit Kichas Bises Hayam. Because the two go together, because there was such a great revelation of the Shekhinah. That pushed them to continue with the Bises Hayam, because that pushed them to do what they felt was Hashem's Ratzon. So it's not that they wanted to stay there because they needed the gold and silver. The Beruchni, as they felt it's an important thing to do, which fits to the fact that there was the great revelation of the Shekhinah, because that made them feel the Ruchnis even more. Now, what's the explanation that they thought that this was the Ratzon of Hashem? Eine von der Biurim is this. So one of the explanations is Eich bepashtus. Pashut simple. Ve'al pi halacha. And this fits Pashut in halacha in Nigla. Bagulas Mitzrayim given at Sivui. When they went on the Mitzrayim, there was a commandment of Hashem. He said, Vayishalu ish me'Yisrael. A man from his friend, the people should take from the Egyptians, borrow, take vessels of silver, vessels of gold. Und der Mechuven bezei given, and what was the purpose? Nicht nur at the Yidden zone bakumen at a chush godel. It wasn't only that the Yidden should get a lot of money, a lot of possessions, that they should get it. Nor eich when itzaltem es Mitzrayim. They wanted that they should empty Mitzrayim. In ganzen usledig Mitzrayim from Kesef Azov Chulu, to empty Mitzrayim from all its gold and silver. Loshe Chazal, like the Chazal say, kimitzu d'shem badogim, kimitzu d'shem bedogim. Like if you have a threshing place which doesn't have any grain, when you take the grain away, it's empty. Or under the water, when the fish are fish usually on top, but under the water there is no fish. So the Eibishter wanted they should empty out the Mitzrayim. So there were two purposes. One purpose is they should get the gold and silver, true. But there's another purpose. The Eibishter wanted to do it against Mitzrayim, but they should be emptied out of Kesef Azov. And that was a commandment of the Eibishter. According to the Eibishter, when the Eden saw at the time of the Yamsuf, they saw there is still some gold and silver left, but the Eden haben noch nicht genommen, they didn't take it yet. So they felt they were obligated, they had to do this Bises Hayam because of what the Eibishter said. They didn't fulfill the Eibishter's commandment completely. The Eibishter said empty Mitzrayim, and they took a lot of gold and silver, but they didn't empty it. How do you know they didn't empty? Because they see there is more here. So that's why they felt that this is a tzivui of the Eibishter. So that's why they didn't want to leave. Not because they cared about the gold and silver. They felt that they still have an obligation to fulfill the Eibishter's will. They verhalten sich zu dem von sehr gehen zu Matan Torah. Because of that, they're delaying. They're going to Matan Torah. And they really wanted to go to Matan Torah. The chover of them, but for that we say, as his own game, like some makabels and the Torah, nigiven conceived. For that, there was no commandment. It doesn't say the Eibishter commanded them, you have to go as soon as possible to Matan Torah. So this was not a commandment. To collect the gold and silver from Mitzrayim is a commandment. So they felt this takes precedent over going to Matan Torah. because they were not commanded to go Matan Torah. Also, the Eibishter gesagt, bei Tziach Hashem Mitzrayim Tapten and Salakim Lahorasem, and the Eibishter said when they were still in Mitzrayim, that when you leave Mitzrayim, you will serve Hashem on this mountain, which means you will receive the Torah. It is gesagt geworden, nicht beturtzivu. It wasn't said as a commandment to the Eden, nor als a Sipur von ein Ingen, was für sein Boss ist noch jetzt Mitzrayim. They were told something that's going to happen after you go out of Mitzrayim. And it doesn't even say when you're going to do that. So there was no like time limit when it's going to happen. And Bechlau, it wasn't even Hashem commanded them to go to Matan Torah. He just told them it's going to happen. So therefore, so the fact that they have to go and they want to go to Matan Torah is not enough to push away fulfilling the commandment of Hashem of emptying Mitzrayim. Here was the chance. If they would leave now, they wouldn't get another chance to finish off emptying Mitzrayim. So they felt this is first. Because they wanted to continue with its fulfillment of the Tzivi Hashem, which they felt is more important than going to Matan Torah because there was no command for them, there was no time limit. So Churet answers the question very well. Das ist aber nicht maßig, der Rebbe says it's not enough. For bald as Meisha geheißen, die Jiden, die sind mal weg von Yamsuf, since, who told them to leave now, the Yamsuf? Meisha Rabbeinu. It's doch Posher, that's clear. Also, sie haben verstanden, dass sie gewinnen auf die Tzivi Hashem. So they understood that Moshe told them because that's what the Eibishter wanted. The Eibishter told them to go. The Kasha comes back. The whole thing was they felt this was the right thing to do. Mitzvah the Tzivi Hashem. You know what? Moshe Rabbeinu knew that too. And nevertheless, Moshe Rabbeinu told them to go. So obviously, at this point, the Eibishter's rotzen is they should leave. So then how could you say they didn't want to leave because they felt this Eibishter's rotzen? When the Eibishter through Moshe Rabbeinu, whatever he said from the Eibishter, clearly wants them to leave. So now the Eibishter's rotzen is they should leave. So what's the shot? They didn't want to leave because they felt they still have to fulfill the Eibishter's rotzen. Is there beer in them? So the explanation is like this. On the mentik afila der Masse von Eden zum Bachsinat zum Matanterik wenn an von Tzivi Hashem. Even if we're going to hold that now that they have to go to Matan Torah is a commandment, which just seems like if Moshe Rabbeinu told them to go, that's what the Eibishter wants them to, commanding them to go. So let's assume that they knew that. They heard Moshe Rabbeinu saying and they knew that. Von deswegen haben Eden gehalten, nevertheless Eden held, and we darf das abhalten, bis noch ein Verändigen dem Kiem hat sie von den Zaltern zu schreien. This is like a commandment to go to Matan Torah. Let's say there is. Moshe is telling you that's what the Eibishter wants. But we have to hold it back a little. We have to delay it first to finish that Tzivud. That's also a Tzivud. Certainly that this mitzvah of collecting the biza, the loot by the Yamsu, is a mitzvah that will pass. Which means that if you leave now, you won't be able to do it later. You'll miss the mitzvah. And there's a din that if there's a dispute, like a conflict, should you learn Torah or should you do a mitzvah? So the din is if it's a mitzvah Iveres, if you don't do the mitzvah now, the mitzvah will not be able to be done. That takes precedent over learning Torah. So the same thing they applied here, at the Rebbe said Matan Torah. Matan Torah is in the category of Limud Torah. Just like by learning Torah, the mitzvah, if you miss a mitzvah because of learning Torah, you have to do the mitzvah and not learn Torah. So here it also, there's a commandment, and we have to go to Matan Torah. That's the union of Torah. But nevertheless, at this point, we still want to fulfill the mitzvah, which the mitzvah is a mitzvah veres, the mitzvah is going to pass. And that was their svara. But the question is, it doesn't really answer the question, as the Rebbe will say. In AFP, at the form was Meisha to heißen wegen von Yamsu, und nicht von dem sich mit dieses Yom. But on the other hand, since Moshe Rabbeinu told him, you have to leave now, and don't continue with the Bizes Hayam, with collecting there. Is Araya, the Rotz Hashem, in dem Fall, given the Tzibur when it's Altem Mitzrayim, AFP was he is a veres, so yet nicht gewähnt mit Neak Domes Talmud Torah, or Matan Torah. Since Moshe knew that too, that there is a halacha that mitzvah vera, mitzvah that's going to pass, takes precedent over learning Torah. Nevertheless, mitzvah Moshe Rabbeinu told them leave. That means that the Eibishter now wants, and everything is because they're doing only what the Eibishter wants. The Eibishter wants that in this case, forget about the mitzvah veras, push away the mitzvah, even though it's going to pass, in order to go to Matan Torah. So even though usually a mitzvah that's passing is stronger, more important than Torah, but not in this case. How do you know it's not this? Because Moshe Rabbeinu told him he should go right now. So then it comes out that this mitzvah is supposed to be pushed away because of learning Torah, in this case, Matan Torah. Is the Tona Zebe the Master from Bakorchon? Oh, this is what the Rebbe explains. Taka true. In other words, they really, really were planning to leave because the Eibishter said. Moshe told them to leave, and they know that no matter what cheshbon they have, the Eibishter wants them, and they're going to leave. But when they were going to leave, they felt it. They're doing it by force. That means they're forcing themselves to leave. Not that they were going to delay it. When Moshe forced them, it says he made them go by force, means he made them go, and they went. And the Rebbe explained they went to Simcha. They knew that this is the right thing to do. At the same time, they had a feeling that they're missing something out, but they have to go. By Leitzei Rabbanah, because according to their understanding, the way they understood the Inyonim of Torah, Darv Zayin the din should have been the way they understood. Verending Frier Bezes Hayam, first to finish off collecting from the Yam, nicht mevatel sein dem Zivil from Mitzaltem es Mitzrayim, not to go against, to fulfill this mitzvah of emptying Mitzrayim. So both things are true. The truth is that they right away wanted to do what the Eibishter wants, but it came by them in the form that they felt they're missing something out. They still had to do it because that's what the Eibishter wants. So it comes out that both are true. They did it right away with a feeling of Bal Korcha, that they're missing something out, which Bal Korcha means that I don't understand. I really think we should do it the other way. What David says, so we're doing it, but it's against what they understood. Apia now, so the Rebbe said, based on this, that the reason the Eden were so involved in collecting the loot by the Yam is because they wanted to fulfill the mitzvah of Insaltem et Mitzrayim that verentered noch at me in Dinyan. This, by the way, this answers another kasha in this whole Dinyan. What's the kasha? Why were the Eden so involved in collecting the gold and silver by the Yam? Besides the kasha we asked before, what kind of importance was Gashmias when they had such great revelation of Ruchnias? That's answered because the Ruchnis and Yonim, they wanted to collect it. But there's another question here. Why did they care so much? They were involved so much in Bisas Hayam. That they had to force them to leave the Yamsuf. They knew they were going to the desert. What did they need so much gold and silver for? They're going to a desert. No people are there. People don't live there. What is the purpose of getting so much? What are they going to do with it? They have nothing to do with this gold and silver. The Frat, certainly, especially as a tzeket and einkef in the Yonei Tzarchas from the Tagarum is that in order to be able to in the desert buy stuff from the merchants of the nations around the desert. So that's what it says in Chazal tell us that they used to come to the desert, used to buy stuff from them. They had plenty, more than enough for what they took out of Mitzrayim. The Maimer Chazal, like the Chazal tell us, as Mitzrayim, that when they went out of Mitzrayim, there was not one Yid that did not have 90 strong special donkeys that was loaded with gold and silver in Mitzrayim. So they had enough money, plenty, to use in the desert. On the other hand, they beaten them down for the Patek Zeres Amaragam, gerechnet das gleich noch wie das Jamste, was reingehen in that stroll. On the other hand, you could say maybe the reason is they didn't think they're going to stay in the desert. The kasha was, what are they going to do with the money in the desert? They didn't plan to be in the desert. They thought they're going to go straight into Eretz Yisrael. It says in Chazal, if they wouldn't sinned in the desert, then they would have gone straight to Eretz Yisrael, and that would have been Mashiach. That would have been the complete Gula, the complete redemption, which would not have a Golus after that. So if that's what they thought, but there's sicher kein Ort nicht zu sagen, so for sure there's no place to say, as beim Greiten sich zur Matze von Gula Nitzchis haben ihn gesucht zu uns, haben Aribe Gott und Kessel versorgt. That when they were praying, thinking that they were going to go straight to the final redemption, they were working on getting more gold and silver. If you're going for that, who needs gold and silver? So the Shaila is basically, what did they need so much gold and silver that they were involved? Appeal now is as for answered Rapashtas. Based on what we said before, it's answered very clearly. They were involved, what they were collecting the gold and silver was because they wanted to do the commandment of Hashem, as the Zolzayim and Itzaltem is Mitzrayim, that they should empty Mitzrayim. That's why they didn't make any calculations. What are we going to gain by getting so much gold and silver? So they did the will of Hashem, the commandment of Hashem with their heart and with their whole soul. The mailers that are begging from Dortmund, so therefore, when they left, before they finished it, it was Bal Korcham. They felt they're missing out in doing it because they were so involved in it. But they were involved only for the mitzvah. So the bottom line is they left. It's not the pshat that they were involved and they didn't want to go. As soon as they heard they have to go, they went because they knew that's what they're supposed to do. At the same time, that a feeling that we're missing something out and we think we shouldn't have gone, but we have to go. That's what David wants. But they still felt they missed out in fulfilling the complete mitzvah of Hashem, of an Nitzalta Mitzrayim, emptying Mitzrayim. This will be explained more after we explain the deeper inner pshat in what it means that the Eibishter wanted them to empty Mitzrayim. The Lechura is not moving. And the Rebbe is going to explain why we have to come to a deeper pshat. It's not just to empty Mitzrayim so the Yidden should take away the gold and silver from Mitzrayim, to punish Mitzrayim. You could say that. Lechura is not moving. For was is given as a wichtig. Not understood why was it so important the Rinja from Yetzer B'chush Gordel that they should go out with a lot of treasure. Bis as der Eibishter hat nicht gewollt Iden Mevater sein of them. So much so that the Eibishter did not want to forgo that. Because it says in Chazal that when Moshe told them, you're going to soon go out of Mitzrayim and you're going to go out with gold and silver, you know what the Yidden answered? He couldn't care less about the gold. So get us out right away. And the Gemara even gives a moshel if somebody came to a prisoner and said, tomorrow we're letting you out of jail and you're going to get a lot of money. So he says, do me a favor. Let me out today and forget about the money. And the Eibush, and same thing here, the Yidden said, go out now, we don't care about the money. And the Eibush just said, no. You have to take out the Rechush Gadol. Why was it so important for the Eibush? So much so that he said, I'm not going to forego this. This has to be done. You have to take it out. But what's the reason? This is explained by understanding what is the reason for this negative commandment of Bal Tashchis. Bal Tashchis means you're not allowed to destroy anything. You can't take anything that's useful and destroy it. And it's allowed. It's a negative commandment. Like Tashchis, you're not allowed to destroy anything. And it doesn't mean destroying somebody else's thing. Then you're hurting him. Then Avada, that's Gneve, that's you're not allowed to do that. Stealing. Your own thing. You're the Balabos. But there's a law. If it's useful, you cannot destroy it. And we find a similar expression, Teirah Chasam Amein Shel Yisrael, the Teirah cares about money of the Yidden. If it's a Yiddish geld, the Eibishter wants it shouldn't get lost. It should, what's the purpose of it? So the explanation that's given there, in Baal Shem Tov and other Svarim, is because in every Gashmisdike thing, there is a Nitzutz Hagdusha, there's a holy spark. And by utilizing any Gashmisdike thing for good, for a mitzvah, for something good, you elevate the spark. If you destroy something that's useful, then you're going to ruin that spark. That spark will never be elevated. So if it's not useful, it's a chatchila make for that, so there's no spark anymore there. But if it's still useful, I mean, you still can bring a spark out. That's the reason why the Torah said, like Tashchis, you can't destroy. The Torah cared about Mamenu Shel Sol, the Mammon of Yidden, not because the Torah wants you to be rich. Because if you own money, you have money, any Gashmistic thing, you could utilize this for Kedusha, elevate the sparks. The same thing here. The Eibishter wanted them to take out the Rechush Godel, because the Rechush Godel main teich, the Nitzutz is Kedusha v'ayne given and the Kesef is Oshel Mitzrayim. When they took out this great treasure, this means they took out the holy sparks that was there in the gold and silver of the Mitzrayim, of the Egyptians. And durch them, what the Kesef Azov is eigentlich Reshus Yisrael, but this gold and silver went into the domain, into the possession of Yidden. Seine die Nitzutz ist nicht alle geworden. So these sparks were elevated from Erva Sores, from the lowest level of the world, of the earth, which is Mitzrayim. The Reshus B'nai Yisrael went into the domain, into the ownership of Yidden, which means L'Kedusha, came to Kedusha. Und wie bald that the Aveda from Birer and the Tzutzes Aninya Nikri in Aveda Hashem, since elevating, purifying these holy sparks is a very important part in Aveda V'Yidden, Aveda Hashem. By doing this, you fulfill the whole purpose of creation. Everyone knows that the purpose of creation is Nisava Kodesh Baruch Hu, Liesli, Dire B'Tachteinim, Tafke. The Eibishter had a desire to have a dwelling place, Dafke in the lower world, Dafke in the Gashmias. So, this is what Eibishter wanted with the creation. And how do you do it? By having the Gashmias and utilizing and using the Gashmias for Kedusha, taking it from Klippa to Kedusha. The Riber hat man nicht gekannt bewahrte sein auf dem Rechush Godel, so you couldn't overlook and forego the Rechush Godel, because there are Netzutzes Kedusha that the Eibishter wants you to take out. Well, there is this is a Yambam Kriyas Yamsuf. Not only when they took it in Mitzrayim before they left, by collecting the gold and silver by Bisis Hayam, when they were taking the loot of the Yamsuf, by Kriyas Yamsuf, the same thing. Wissend dem größten Inyan, was wird aufgetan durch den Birer und Zutzes von Bisis Hayam, the Yidden knowing the great accomplishment in spirituality, ruchnius, that happens by elevating the sparks in the holy things that the Gashmi is the gold and silver that was there by the Yam. So when they were involved in collecting it, they were so involved, they were so with their whole chayas, with their whole life, they were involved in it. It wasn't because they needed the gold and silver. They were doing the Aveda of Bira and Tzutzes. Noch mehr, even more than that. Those Gufel by Kriyas Yamsuf is given the Galas Hashchina and Anayim from Zek Keli, Martin Esebez, but the fact that by Kriyas Yamsuf there was the revelation of the Shechina in such a way that they even were able to point their finger and say, Zek Keli, this is my God, Martin Esebez, such a great revelation, not by saying, Noch mehr verstärkt the Maraim Tazich and the Kichas B'Tzayam. That strengthened even more the fact they got more involved in collecting the Gashes Vadiyam. Like this, it would be your heart, you're also. Means more than you're able to. Because Gilei Lakus, and here they're able to do something that the Eibusher wants in such a high level, so they did it very strong. And the Rebbe even gives a Moshel Gashmi, that because they had the revelation of Hashem, that gave him even more chayas. As we see, when the Yid knows and feels that Hashem is standing and watching them do the mitzvah, then he does the mitzvah with his whole heart, his whole soul, and with his whole might, his whole keach. There's no part of you that's not involved in the mitzvah, because you know the Eibusher is watching you. So when they had Gilui Lakus, they saw the Eibusher there, Kiviyachol, that made them getting involved in Bisas Hayam even stronger, knowing that they're doing a big Aveda. The Tachlis HaKavanah of the Bria Seila, why the Eibusher in the world is to be the Tzutzis. And das is der Pirish Apnimi Nasim Balkorcha. That's the deeper pshat that he made him go away from there by force. Nicht chas v'sholem even noch Kriyas Yamsuf have nicht gewollt follow Moshe Rabbeinu. It's not that after Kriyas Yamsuf, such a high level, they didn't want to listen to Moshe. Moshe told them to go, and they didn't want to. Moshe has to schlep him, pull him away. That's not chas v'sholem. That's what happened. Zicherem ze mekayim given tziva Moshe. For sure, they did. Moshe's command was is tziva Hashem, which is automatically the tziva, the command of David. Avege for Yamsuf, and go away from him. And they certainly did it. The simcha of Tuv Levov, knowing that this is what David wants. They were happy and doing it with a good heart to leave. But the Pirish Pnimi and Balkorcham is, what does it mean? The deep pshat that they did it like against their will. Ados is Balkorcham from Zeir Seichel Ba'avona B'Teire. It's against their understanding, the way they understood the Teire, Binyamin Itzaltem and Mitzrayim, and the union of emptying Mitzrayim. Zaynik in ganzen reingetan in der Avedas Abirurim for Bisas Hayam, since they were very, as we said before, very much involved in elevating, doing the birur and the tzutzis, elevating the tzutzis Akdusha. And they were involved to it, the cholavovim, nafshim made about their heart and soul and completely involved. And they were so involved, and now they're told to go. So right away, for sure, they said, we're going. The Eibusher wants to go. But they say, so they're tearing themselves away from what they were doing before, was, so to speak, we could call it by force. When they turned us in Sat Kabbalah Seil, they did it. Because they accept the yoke of Hashem, folgen Ratzon Hashem to listen to the will of Hashem. Aber kemuken b'simcha tu b'lavo, they did it very happily. Because to do it Eibusher's Ratzon is very happily. But at the same time, it was hard for them. And the more we explain that how much they were involved, beruchli senyonim, because bitter and tzutzis, besides the halacha part of it, the Pershmekayim to Eibusher's mitzvah to empty Mitzrayim, but they were involved so much because that's the Aveda beruchnius, and they were involved very much in it. So certainly it was hard for them to go away, but they didn't hesitate. They went right away. So it was a simcha of Tuv Levov, and at the same time we call it Bakorchot. The Yisayrim of Yisrael, the Rebbe says we could say even more. After the Eibusher told them now to go Matan Torah, so they knew. Even though we said on Seichel, they didn't understand that they should be doing this. They thought we have to finish Bira and Tzutzis. But since the Eibusher told them no, time is now to continue going to Matan Torah, as es hat sich verendigt the key in Bemelas Mana Mitzvah in Tzaltans Mitzrayim, that what you were trying to do, to empty Mitzrayim and Bira and Tzutzis is finished. The Eibusher told them that mitzvah is over. So if that mitzvah is over,